Hello, welcome back to Learn It from a Layman. I am Carl Christensen, and I am solo podcasting again. Everyone's off busy, so I wanted to take the opportunity to discuss a topic that we haven't touched on in a while, and something that I work frequently with, and that's elements of computer science. And today, specifically, we're going to be touching on browsers. So we'll talk about the basics of web browsers. Um, so, if you're not familiar with what browsers are, uh, well, welcome to the 21st century, but a, so it's possible that you just don't even recognize these days that there is a difference between a computer and a browser. Most of your time spent on your phone, your mobile device, your tablet, whatever it might be, is often either spent on an app or in a browser. So, a browser is just a client application. So that means it's something on your local mobile app or computer, laptop, whatever it is, that is the means and the gateway to the internet. So it does all of the connection and the rendering of all of these web pages that you are visiting. So on a basic level, browsers do exactly that. That's why they're called a browser. It's like you would go to a library and browse a selection. In this software application, the browser, you browse web pages, right? You go through to different sites, you click different links, and it is the browser's job to make the requests to the various computers and networks involved to get the content that you're requesting and to make that consumable by you. So there's a lot that goes into it, and so we could touch on a lot at this podcast, but we're going to try to keep it pretty focused, I guess, to what a layman might most be interested in as far as what browsers do and how they function and what browser to choose. And whether or not you're safe using a particular browser, if there's a browser that works better for particular situations or operating systems or those types of questions. So now that we kind of understand what a browser does, let's talk about, I think, a very basic question a lot of people have, and that's, what does the browser track my activity? The privacy concerns are a big deal. United States, but across the world, people are worried about what's being tracked, what's being used, who has what data, and what role this has, depending on what browser I'm using. So the de facto leader in the browser space is Google Chrome. And if you do some searching online, you'll find that Google Chrome has about an 80% share and has maintained that off and on for years now. So that is massive, right? If someone had 80% of a particular market, there'd be antitrust involved. But Google Chrome is free, and obviously you can select it. So it has benefits and it has cons. So let's talk a little bit about the privacy issues with Chrome. So I'm aware that some people are very hesitant to use Google Chrome, or at least reticent to use it because of privacy concerns. And it is the case that Google does a lot with data aggregation and does a lot with using personal data, web data to do to do what they do best, which is sell ads, which is what Google really makes their money off of, right? Personalized ads and things like that. So when you log in, and that's the big thing. So if you're logged into your Google account, then you are using and then you navigate, you browse in Chrome. They're aggregating that data. They're looking at the sites that you visit, the time that you spend on the. They're doing a lot of they're tracking everything. There's analytics. There's something called web analytics that let you. They It's done on a site level. It's also done at the browser level, so they can figure out exactly what you're spending time on, right? where your interests lie so they can target ads for you. Some people view that as a big negative. I personally have mixed emotions about it. I do see the benefits of targeted ads. Candidly, I'd rather not have spam ads, meaning just all over the place. Um, I know a lot of people use ad blockers. I am also aware, though, that while ad blockers benefit you individually, at least in the short term, the idea behind ad blockers is that you don't want to see the ads. Well, the ads are how they're making money, right? And you, by blocking ads, are taking some of their revenue away, and you might not care. The problem is if everyone does that, then they have to start various websites would have to start charging um, for access, and so it's going to change the model, right? And so that's the give and take with ads and how those are used. But back to the privacy concerns and the data that is collected in browsers. So in Chrome, you log in, it has all of your bookmarks, all that information, and as a result, you're also giving them access to a lot of your data. Uh, Other browsers and all browsers have some role in this. It is important to recognize, though, that browsers and companies that create these browsers are not the only people getting your data, aggregating your data, and selling your data. Your internet service provider also gets your data. So, and we'll get to virtual private networks in just a second for those of you that are in the advanced class here. But the basics here is that, like we said, the browser's job is to do the heavy lifting of the internet, right? They're out there. You type in an address, you click on a link or whatever, and it's doing all the navigating, the routing. Well, in so doing, it's talking to your internet service provider. It's saying this person is identified by this IP address, which is your personal identity on the internet, is going to this website and is requesting this data. And so your internet service provider can say, let's use that and let's sell it. And so there's lots of fingers in the pie here as far as if you are concerned about internet safety, internet privacy, that a browser is not the only concern that you have. There is also the concern about network communications. And so obviously there's also malware and all those other things. A virtual private network can be a benefit, at least to the idea that your information is available as you click on links, and therefore they know that you are going to a particular website and all those related privacy concerns and tracking information. A virtual private network it's a software and a server. It's a client-server architecture. That means you have something locally on your device, and then there's a server out there that is doing some job for you. And in this case, in a virtual private network, without getting into the weeds, they're doing encryption. And in this podcast, in the past, in various podcasts, we've talked about encryption to different levels. Encryption is just translating your data into a format that is only readable by particular individuals. If you have a key, for example, something like that, right? It's imagine taking a piece of information and wrapping it up in duct tape so that no one can see what it is, and you hand it off and you run it over, and then someone has a particular tool to get the duct tape off. That might not be a great analogy, but you get what I'm going for. So the encryption is important as far as making sure that nobody that only your VPN provider actually gets access to those requests. They encrypt that and then they send it off. And so that's how you are protected via VPN. So that's something to consider. Once again, if you, it also masks your IP address, so they don't have the ability to track it to you specifically. And so there are lots of benefits from VPN. I know that in other countries where there's limited free and open access to the internet, VPNs can be a kind of a workaround. I've never lived in countries without free and open access to the internet, so I don't know what the laws are about that. But I do know that it is a way that I know some people circumvent issues where certain sites or ideas are being blocked or censored. All right, we've strayed a little bit from browsers here. Virtual private networks, not exactly browser specific, but it is something related tangentially to the idea that privacy in a browser is a concern. But coming all the way back to Google Chrome, um, a lot of people also know about the incognito mode. That does help if you are concerned, if your main concern isn't necessarily about um, the Google or the internet service provider collecting your data, and you're more concerned that your web searches and your browsing history is available to anyone that gets on the computer. It's either at a public computer or a computer where you share it with family, and you want to search for a present to get your mom or your sister or whoever it might be. In that case, incognito mode is probably sufficient for what you need. In that case, you're no longer your searches, your history, none of that is being tracked. That is not to say that everything is like if you can still log into accounts, right? And as soon as you log into into an account on any you go onto Amazon and log into an account and do stuff on Amazon in an incognito mode, well, sure, it's not going to show up in your browser, but it's still going to show up in Amazon, if that makes sense. So your Amazon account is separate from that browser. So be aware of those types of complications. But it is the case that you can do, if you don't log into your account, and by default incognito mode doesn't you're not logged into anything. It doesn't use the cookies and the information that is stored with your browser to do any of that automatic logging in and search history, autofill, all that kind of thing. That is not done. So as long as you don't take willful action and log yourself in, you're good as far as searching for presents or doing any other type of clandestine research that you don't want your spouse, your children, whatever it is, want them to know about. But like I said, that's not. It's just for local people on the computer mostly that they won't be able to see it, as opposed to like there will still be a potential history of the sites that you visited and those things via your internet service provider or accounts that you log into while you're in there. So let's talk about a few of the other browsers. Like I said, Chrome has something like an 80% share, which is so substantial that it's mind-boggling. It's almost to the point that Internet Explorer was back in the late 90s, or I guess that was Netscape. Anyway, there are other browsers that are modern and work just as well, candidly, as Chrome, though. For example, one that is growing in popularity is Microsoft Edge. Now this is different. Edge is different than your old Internet Explorer browser. They made a clean cut, and while there might be some shared information from years ago, some code that is still lingering, that by and large Edge is very clean. It's very performative, and it's very modern in the way that it renders and deals with web pages and does network communications. So as a developer myself, Edge is a good option as far as just knowing that it will handle network information and render pages in a way that is consistent with modern technology. So Chrome, Edge, obviously I think everyone knows Firefox. It's been around for a long time. It has lost usage over the years, and to the point where it's now behind Edge. Um, and there are a number of reasons for that, but uh, it is it is still a modern browser. It's still fully functioning as far as I guess I'm comparing this if you're on a laptop and using like Internet Explorer, which I pray that you're not. Uh, it is you'll still get great functionality from Firefox, and Firefox doesn't have the same. Maybe a lot of people use it because it doesn't have the same uh, potential privacy concerns, or not affiliated with the companies that you might associate with data harvesting and things like that, like Microsoft or Google have been known to do. So that is an option that some people, that there is still a crowd that swears by Firefox, and it is, like I said, it is a performant browser that will handle modern technology well, modern websites, modern scripts, all those types of things. Um, Safari and Opera. Now we're getting into other. So Safari's for your Mac operating systems, your iPhone, your Apple devices, I guess, and that has a smaller share as well. And then Opera. Anyway, then there's a host of other browsers out there. I think you could spend quite a while talking about all the various browsers that are available. Um, those are the top five that I just listed: Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, and Opera. Um, One of the reasons that Chrome is so ubiquitous is that not only do people use it on their desktop machines at work, they also use it on their mobile devices, right? Android is huge. In the United States, iPhones are still probably the number one mobile device. But Androids around the world are the number one mobile device, and it's not close. And and when you get an Android mobile device and open it up, and guess what's already there? Chrome. So, in as much as people do most of their web browsing and things like that on the internet, um, on their mobile device these days, obviously, then the share of the market that Android phones have helps Google with their Chrome share of the browser market. So, but yeah, let's once again just talking about what the various browsers are good at. Um, you'll hear lots of different things about Chrome, Edge, their pros and cons. It is the case that browsers can be a massive memory drain. Um, they've gotten better over the last few years. Chrome's gotten better as far as just not eating up all the available RAM. And if any of these terms, by the way, are not sounding familiar, when I'm talking networks and RAM, and I'm talking scripts and all that kind of things, I recommend that you go back and listen to our Basics of Computer Science podcast. We talk about, I think, every one of those terms, and kind of walk you through what some of that is. But in each one of these browsers, when you go to a web page, any modern web page is going to have a mix of markup information. So that's like your HTML, your hypertext markup language, and then scripts that are running things in the background, so that are either pulling data from a server or uh, various manipulating data on your computer. Scripts are doing a bunch of different things. And so these various browsers have to know how to do that well, how to uh, run the scripts correctly, what to do in case of an issue, the various errors that can come up when you're making network requests. How are they going to deal with those? All the different potential issues that come up with different computers using different versions of different servers, different sites, websites using different versions of markup languages, and maybe something that's non-standard, maybe something that's new and cutting edge technology as far as what's available for scripts and markup languages. Um, And so these have to be pretty robust um, pieces of software, these browsers, and especially obviously for how much we rely on them these days. Anytime that your browser isn't working for you, it's almost like it's a dead end. So that's one of the things I guess I want to recommend in this podcast is become familiar with more than one browser, because it is the case where if you get on a particular website and you're going along and filling out some form or something like that, and all of a sudden you're just roadblocked, right? All of a sudden there's no button, or uh, you click something and nothing happens, and you're just sitting there frustrated, pulling your hair out and screaming at the computer or the phone or whatever and saying, what's going on? Be aware that one of the potential issues is a script and or web page issue being rendered, or that script being run by that browser, and there's an error that's occurred, and either the browser's not handling it right, or the script did something that the browser wasn't expecting, and now we've got a state where you're just dead in the water. The browser's not trying to do anything, or the script is frozen, or something like that, and you are dead-ended. So in that case, I recommend trying a different browser. It's important that you then have access to more than one browser so that this is an option. If it's not working on your Chrome browser, then you should try either Microsoft Edge or Firefox or something like that to see if it is a problem across the board, or if different browsers have handled it differently, because these are all different pieces of software. The code written is obviously in a lot of cases very similar, because it's all dealing with the same data, but they do it in different ways, and they handle errors in different ways. And so I know I ran into this actually just, what's today? 2 days ago. I was sitting with a guy, and we were doing some work together on a computer, and we were filling out a form, and he clicked a button, and nothing happened. And we sat there, and we sat there, and we sat there, and he's getting frustrated and flustered, and I was like, okay, can I take a look here? And so I opened up a different browser, got to the same place, and guess what? The button worked. And so it's just something to consider. Like I said, it's not the case that it's always going to be foolproof. Sometimes sites are just broken, sometimes web pages just don't work, but it's sometimes the browser's fault. So explore that possibility. So that's one of the reasons to be familiar with multiple browsers. Another is sometimes some are just more performant and better at, if you have a lot of tabs open, is it eating up all of your memory? Are you able to navigate around your computer still? Is something running in the background that you want to stop, and maybe a different browser handles that better. So for a lot of the world that is only familiar with Google Chrome, or at least has very little experience anywhere else, do some perusing, give yourself some options so that you are allowing the best performance software to fill your needs. I'm always a fan of making sure that these different software providers, you put them to the test, and make sure that the best technology wins. All right, let's see. So one of the things that a lot of users don't know anything about in a browser is what's going on behind the scenes, right? And I've made reference to that in this podcast already, but if I am on a web page, what is going on? For those of you that are curious, and you're on Learn It from a Layman, you're likely curious. Let me give you a little bit of inside information of how to find out what's going on, because sometimes this can help also identify where the issues are if you're running into an issue, or just help you recognize what all is going on a website. So if you go open Google Chrome or Edge, I believe Firefox as well, all modern browsers, and then if this is assuming you're on a laptop or a desktop, I believe you can do this on your mobile device as well. I haven't done it, or maybe I have actually. Anyway, it's been a while. But if you're on a browser, um, on a laptop or a desktop, and you can hit F12. You're going to, that's the button, F12, to be clear, not F and then type 12. The button on your keyboard, F12, that will bring up something called your network tools. And these are, I think some software, some browsers, you have to install something first. These are development tools, usually only used by web developers, software developers, in order to debug issues, to go through and figure out what's going on. But this can also be useful to you, just to see how much is involved in even a single web page, and what all is running in the background. And if something's slow, you can figure out why it's slow. And if there's an issue, you can often see issues. There's a bunch of tabs when you hit F12 that opens up. It's going to open up another pane inside your browser, another little window. It's going to cut off part of the web page and hand it over to this network tools tab. And there's a bunch of different options. So one of them is, so I'm looking in Chrome right now. If you're in Chrome and you're following along with me, we got the Elements tab. The Elements is going to give you your markup. This is going to be the page itself, and this is the HTML page that's delivered to your web page and rendered by your browser. And there you can see all the different tags. I might do just a markup language podcast in the future, just to walk you through a little bit about all of this information. But suffice to say, if you hover over each one of these elements, you will see different parts of your screen lighting up with different colors. What that means is that is the element that results in the thing that you're seeing in your web page. So if you hover over a div, that's an element in your web page, and it highlights the whole page, well, you have like the main rendered element of the web page. Anyway, you can dig down in that and see what each one looks like, what they're named, how big they are, a lot of things that you probably don't care about, candidly. But it is interesting, and it is sometimes useful if, like I say, if something's cut off, if you can't find data that you expect to be on a particular website, or it looks like it should be there and it's gone. Anyway, you can see if it actually ever even got to your browser, because your browser here will show you everything that it's trying to render, everything it's trying to show you. So that's your elements. The next one over is the console, and that's really that's going to be your kind of your logging information. That's what's going to tell you, oh, I did this. Your browser is going to say this happened, this happened, this happened. And so if there are errors, and it turns out there are often errors loading, that you're going to see them there. And lots of different information that, once again, isn't relevant to you. But if there are errors, if you're hit on a web page and like something's not loading or something, then you can go to this page and you can see, oh, what is the error? Like, what exactly is going on? Why isn't ESPN loading, or why isn't this website loading, or why is it broken? And you can come here and you'll see if there's an error, it'll say, oh, this is what happened. And then for the layman out there that's like, I have no idea what that means, you could Google it, right? You could copy, paste it, and say, oh, what is a 404 error? Well, it turns out a 404 error means nothing. There's nothing there. We went looking for that link that you told us was there, and the website says that link doesn't exist. So that's an example of an error that you probably wouldn't generally know about, but there are a bunch of different HTML errors that could come back. So that is your console tab. Like I said, just a bunch of information that your browser says this happened, this happened, this happened when trying to get this page. We're going to skip past the recorder. Performance insights, those could be useful just to figure out what's going on, but that's generally just useful for like I said, for developers. The sources is really interesting because that is all the various script files and information, images, all those types of things that are coming in with that website. So you'll see fonts, you'll see JavaScript files, you'll see all kinds of information coming in on your sources. And you can click them and you can see what information is being pulled in order to render and create this web page. Once again, this is for the layman mostly just interesting. It's not something that you can do a lot of action based on. You can actually change some of the scripts locally. Obviously, this doesn't go back to the server. It's not like you can change a script on your website locally and then all of a sudden you've broken Google's homepage or something like that. That's not a thing. But you could change something locally in a script and have it rendered in the page locally. So anyway, there's a bunch of information here, but this is mostly just to show you all the different elements, and not elements as in elements like HTML elements, but all the different script files, images, fonts that are pulled to create this website that you're viewing. I think we'll just hit one more before we wrap up this podcast, and that's the network tab. And this one is it's important and probably one of the more useful ones even for the layman, because this is where your browser is telling you, look, this is what I'm doing to try to get your web page up for you. So this is not locally, but actually the network. So this is, I just clicked a link, what's going on as far as the different parts of the page that need to be pulled. So maybe a bunch of images, a couple links, a script, all of these different things that are being requested from the network. Information by a script is pulling from a different website, all that kind of stuff. Everything that is going over the network is going to be showing up in this network tab. And so if you are worried that what as to where your information is going and who's seeing it and all that kind of stuff, well, this is it. Now there is a lot to sort through. Like I said, these things are modern web pages there's a lot involved, and so you'll see lots of different requests made about and different URLs, different statuses. And probably the best thing for the layman, though, is to see the time-related elements of this. So it will actually show you how long particular requests take, and what's ongoing as far as requests being made and pulled from different network locations. So when an ad pops up, where's that coming from? Why did that take forever to load? Why was I trying to click this and all of a sudden an ad showed up right there? Well, it turns out that the request by the page made to that ad service didn't finish navigating, didn't finish loading, and so as soon as it did, it rendered it on the page. So it wasn't really the browser's problem directly, it was that call to the network, which is why all of a sudden when you're trying to click something, I get frustrated by this frequently. I'm going to click something on a news site or ESPN, a sports news or something like that. I go to click it and all of a sudden it's in a different location and it's maddening. So now I click something else, right? Well, the reason that those things happen is the network requests finish at different times, and therefore all of this is done asynchronously, meaning at different times the browser can load different elements of your web page, and so it does. It loads them as it can. Oh, I can put this up there. I can put this up there. Oh, here comes the ad. It's finally back. Let me put that up there. And so that's what's happening when you're trying to click something and things just keep loading. So if you're frustrated by that, you can at least understand what's going on here, and you can understand and you can actually figure out what specific issue it is. Uh, there's not a lot you can do to stop it in that tab specifically, but you can at least figure out, okay, oh, this is the network call that's being made that's causing this slowness and the site to move all over the place constantly. Um, I guess before we wrap up here, a lot of people are familiar with what cookies are. You see that all the time. Um, when you go to a website, there are laws about, making sure that you are okay, that you okay privacy wise, and you're aware of the cookies that are being stored. Cookies are authentication information. They are personal information about web history, that type of thing, that's stored at a per site level. It's stored locally. It can be also pushed. Cookies can be pushed to the server, but it's information that identifies you for the website. Um, and so those obviously can be problematic as far as privacy is concerned. Um, if you want to ask what I'm not a web developer, but well, I do web development as well. But a developer thinks of that. I accept all cookies essentially all the time, with very few exceptions. And my exceptions are sites that I do not know well, right? So if I'm going to a bank website or something like that, something I trust, that's legalistic for them. They're just checking a box. If I'm going to a new site, not a news site, news sites are usually pretty good too, but if it's some small rinky-dink operation, be very careful about clicking OK, right? Because they can have more malicious reasons that they store data and more cookies that probably are not things you want them storing. So as these things are wont to be, it's on a case-by-case basis, but in most cases for me, I don't mind them storing my cookies because I'm aware of what cookies do, and as having done web development myself, I know they're necessary sometimes, just in that order to facilitate the best experience you can on a web page. If I can't store cookies, you're going to have to authenticate more frequently. You're going to have to um, you're not going to have the whole experience of being able to load quicker, load more of your personal information. Anyway, for in most cases it's done for your benefit. Like I said, just be aware of where you're going, and if you're not sure, don't click I accept all or whatever for those cookie settings. Like I said, cookies are stored locally, but they can also push to servers, and they are tracking you. So let's see if there's anything else we want to finish off with here as far as browsers are concerned. I think once again it's just important to be aware that browsers are local software that are doing a lot of network things. So if very few things that you do in a browser are actually staying there with you. They're going across the network. And the network is the internet, which means it's going everywhere. So a VPN, if you're worried about privacy or someone spying on you, those types of issues, highly recommend. Businesses often require a VPN because they don't want their employees to be tracked, and they want encryption as far as what their employees might be working on, those types of things. So VPNs are often required for businesses, but browsers are just a tool to access and manipulate and interface with the internet. So there are better tools and there are worse tools, and tools have obviously different strengths and weaknesses, and be aware that browsers are constantly updating. They're constantly getting better. There's new technology out there, and so every time when you open it up and you wonder, well, what is this stupid thing saying I have to close down my browser to update, so that I could, that's either Google's developers or Microsoft's developers or Firefox's developers that are trying to stay on top of either issues that they've run into or new features, new information, new ways scripts are running, new ways that web pages are being handled, that they have to constantly update your browser to handle that. So be patient with those things, but be aware, keep your eyes wide open as far as what's going on in your browser, because that is a way that you are interfacing with the world. And so I hope this has been useful for you. Like I said, if any of these terms weren't familiar, go back and listen to the computer science podcast. And if you have any other questions or feedback for us, go onto our Facebook page. We also on Twitter. And very few of us listened, very few of the individuals in their thousands. We had a record month last month. So thank you everyone that listened. But very few of you that listen on the Apple podcasts. We do want to grow our share there. So if you know an Apple user, let them know that despite what Matt says, there is no malice. We appreciate all of our listeners, whatever platform they might be using. And we'll be back again next podcast with more information. Thanks for joining us.